so it's a win.
Flip back and forth.
Well, you can flip back and forth too by just clicking these different tabs, but you could also split the screen when you come up here. You can drag it into one of these.
Okay, thank you.
So
Right.
it's
Okay.
Good to go.
Yep.
changes.
Call a meeting to order with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The board did meet prior to this meeting to deal with the informational meeting and deal with litigation issues. Does anyone have any amendments to the agenda, or somebody would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Okay, now we have two sets of minutes. We have the January 6th reorganization and January 6th regular meeting, which were back to back. And I'll accept a motion to approve as presented both.
I'd like to make not a correction, but an addition to both sets of minutes where it has Shane Houck is absent. I like an asterisk be put there and just mention that he was cleaning snow removal. So it wasn't like he just missed the meeting. He was out.
Yep, no problem.
Or now I make a motion to accept the reorganization meeting minutes as presented with the correction.
Okay.
Second that with the correction.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on that? So that's not on the amended minutes. Call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, is there any public comments? Okay, I'll ask again near the end. Takes us to emergency services report. Chief? There you go.
All right. Good evening. Hopefully you had a chance to look over the report by now. The only thing I really have to add is probably since the last quarter of 2024 and has followed through into 2025, we've noticed an uptick in the number of calls. We usually average somewhere between 28, 32 calls a month. We've been at a 40 call average for the last 4 or 5 months now, and that continues. So I don't really have a reason for that. I would just offer that it's our new normal.
Are the false alarms still the same percentage as they did?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. We haven't seen a great deal of change in that.
So it's really an increase in real calls?
Yeah, they are, for the most part, legitimate calls, fires and accidents. So just wanted to make you aware of that. So we, and I'm putting together a year-end report for you. It's almost finished, but you know, we ended the year at 406 calls, which is up about 100 calls over the previous years. We usually average somewhere around 300. So we notice spikes here and there. Many times when we have a busy year, it's usually secondary to something like a tropical storm or a hurricane that hits the area where we get a lot of rain, a lot of wind, things like that, down trees, down power lines, flooded roadways, those kinds of things. We didn't experience that in 2024. We didn't have any significant events. Usually those events produce, 20, 30 calls in a couple of days. We didn't experience that last year, so it's just a noticeable change. So,
If I may, Chief.
Sure.
A lot of people think that the fire department, their only mission is to go out and fight fires, and that's not. And I'll go over some of the stats here for December, if you don't mind.
Sure.
false alarms for 30%. Service call, which is, Chief, service call.
Service calls, and it's probably one of the things that is trending up. We're seeing a lot more calls for fire police, traffic control. So those service calls are not necessarily secondary to vehicle accidents. They are, however, secondary to truck traffic. Broken down vehicles, trucks blocking roadways, trucks that get on roads they shouldn't be on, or trying to make turns that they can't make, and they're getting hung up. So now we have to set up traffic control, reroute everybody, wait for a tow truck to come in. They don't necessarily tow the truck away, but they do pull it straight so they can get the vehicle moving again. So we do see an uptick just in service calls.
Rescue and emergency medical service are self-explanatory, that's 28%. Hazardous conditions, not a fire, is 10%. And fires are 7%.
Right, so we do a really good job with fire prevention. That's the way we like to look at it anyhow. Some months, it varies a little bit based on, month to month. But most of that will hold true. I think you'll see that pie chart will be eerily similar, even with a full year of statistics gathered on it instead of 1 month.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is for the residents to realize that, hey, you're a full service department, not just fire department. But
Correct.
Yes, it's important for people to know that.
Yeah, and truthfully, we never know when that pager goes off. We never know. We might be going out and turning around in 15 minutes from a false automatic fire alarm, or we may be out for 5 hours. We never know what that call is going to entail when that pager goes off. So, and we're seeing more. And I think the question was asked a month or so ago about one of the statistics on there is overlapping calls. Today was a prime example. We were dispatched for a kitchen fire in Manchester Borough, and probably within 5 minutes or less of that, dispatched to an automatic fire alarm in the township. So those calls happen. They fall on top of each other. We handle them as best we can. We rely on mutual aid to come in and help us with that. Fortunately, today was a child who pulled the alarm at the Dollar General.
I think we discussed in a previous meeting about false alarms, the number of false alarms. And we do have a mechanism to somewhat pay for your time going out the door on commercial and industrial false alarms.
Right, we're billing for those.
Okay. And when's the last time did we up that fee for them? Or it's been a while?
I think it's at $100 per inspection.
That's for inspection.
Let's say yes.
Oh,
I think
for
yeah.
the land development plans.
No, I'm saying that if they have to go back to Starbucks for smoke and there's nothing, it's false alarm.
For false alarm, yeah,
Oh,
we
I don't
dictate
think we
that.
do anything.
Our charges are in line with the Commonwealth's fine that the Commonwealth allows to be administered. So Pennsylvania has laws in order that the police departments can file charges. And you may have heard me say this before, and my biggest complaint is if our police department files charges against a business because of a false alarm, the police department gets their cut, East Manchester gets their cut, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania gets their cut. The fire department, on the other hand, who's burning all the diesel fuel and wear and tear on our apparatus, gets a big fat nothing. And that's why we don't have the police department fine these businesses. I send them an invoice. Call it greedy, but then I get 100% of it.
Okay, and I was also surprised at the amount of your training curriculum constantly changes.
Correct.
From airbags to hazardous materials to you name it, it's
Right.
constant. changing electric cars, that sort of thing.
Correct. So you'll see a couple of those things, excuse me, repeat throughout the year. We do a structural burn recertification class every spring and fall. So typically in March, I think that's the next one coming up. And then again, usually around October, we'll do another structural burn class. There could be similar classes in between, but we have some rigid educational stuff. January is always our recertification on hazardous materials because it's all classroom work. So we're sitting inside, when it's cold outside. We have vehicle rescue coming up. We'll do vehicle rescue several times a year, different tools, different scenarios, daytime, nighttime, cold weather, warm weather. We mix that up because that's the realistic part of what we do. So yeah, you'll see us out training in the evening, in the dark, setting up lighting and stuff so that we're accustomed to working in low lighting situations and things like that.
And this is all culminating because we're being streamed. There's people who could be out there watching us. It's very vital to understand that we have volunteer fire departments in our area. So it's vital that they get funding, and please think about contributing to your local fire departments. It's not all inclusive in your tax, and that's a misnomer. So just wanted to throw that out there for anyone listening.
Thank you.
Anything else for Chief?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Your County Regional Police Report. We have 2 in the academy starting. They should come out to be rookie officers on the beat in June timeframe. The merger with Spring Garden Township will be, hopefully, there's a signing ceremony this Thursday night down at the York Township precinct. Well, we'll sign all the necessary papers to make the merger official. Anything else you want to add to that?
No.
York County Emergency Management Agency, I don't see anybody here for that.
He said he'd come quarterly.
Okay. Okay, it takes us down to special requests. Mr. Dan Bayshore is here asking for a request for the York Cup, the White Rose Classic Soccer Tournament, and it's being run by Ballyhoo. And we are going to have some local teams, NISA teams within the tournament, and he's asking our permission to hold the part of the tournament down at Bruner Allen Fields. Is there any objection from the board?
I do not. Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we allow the Northeastern York Soccer Association to allow the York Cup White Rose Classic Soccer Tournament be held at the PPL soccer fields.
I'll second the motion. Any discussion?
If I may.
Yes.
Just require that the certificates of insurance naming each as additional insureds prior to allowing any games to occur needs to be issued to the township. I know that it's a lot, but basically I need the certificate of insurances. Yep.
Okay.
That's all.
Anything you'd like to add, Dan?
No, I've talked to Christie about that before. Just follow up with emails, so I can make sure I can get that to them. Exactly what you want to see on it. It's not going to be anything more than what's in a regular weekend soccer anyway. It's just an outside organization. Again, it's not the sole spot for it. It's running monthly free. It's going to be at Counselor. It's going to be at a couple other parts as well. They just need additional fields. Through the grapevine, got my phone number associated with them. Asked if we could use it, so I brought up to Christie about, should we just do it? And I said, well, shouldn't. It's your guys' goes to emails, so I appreciate that. Again, I guess one thing they did say they would provide some additional order guns down there. Is that something that you guys would be interested in doing? I know there's some
That's
anything
fine.
else down there other than the trailer that's existing, but, you know, for that 2-day event, I think about quarter drums down there.
Which fine.
But other than that, you know, the schedule that takes off in the spring should be sufficient enough. And shouldn't be anything else township wise. It'll be like a normal weekend of soccer that we have down there in the spring and fall.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll call for the vote.
Oh, one
Oh,
question
I'm sorry.
before, do we know if the bridge work will be done till then?
I don't know that.
Don't know that.
Mm-mm.
Okay. You're aware of the bridges one
Yeah,
laying down there?
that was all right. I would imagine it still will be at this point in time.
I know they're just getting ready to switch.
I think they're
Side.
on the side now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let the people running the program know that there could be some delays and restrictions going on. And I have a bunch of contacts at PennDOT, so I can figure out whether there's gonna be a closure that particular weekend. Because I know they're scheduled for some additional full-time closures at certain points. That's not one or this would be a good point, but yeah, that's a good question.
Now call for the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And Dan, are you GM for soccer?
Soccer, yes.
Well, I want to thank you for taking a leadership role in that organization because that organization is vital for our youth in our area. So thank you for that. Okay, our next special request is York County Quick Response Team donation request. We get it every year. Traditionally, we
Donate
donate
$500.
$500. And now this goes to, and I'll let Daryl take over what it's all used for best.
Used for equipment, ammunition, training, the special response team, quick response team, and maintenance of their vehicles.
So this is above and beyond what they supply them ammo for training and they don't use a special vest or anything like that, do they? They use their equipment from their local police departments.
Security.
So this is for consumables, really.
Yes.
Okay. So what's the wishes of the board?
I make a motion, we donate $500 to the York County Quick Response Team. Come from line item 01.410.500.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? I gotta tell you, fellas, last year I questioned it as well. We're always, if we're paying, it's like double dipping in my opinion, you know, for that. But if it's for consumables, which they, quick response team uses, I can understand it, but, I want to make sure that we really think about every donation that we give.
I agree.
So, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Good luck with it. Okay, we have a request from our tax collector.
This is a request to please exonerate 401 residents totaling $2,005 even from her responsibility since these residents have either moved, are deceased, paid elsewhere, or are duplicates. This is an annual thing. This is to clean up her calculations pretty much.
There are a lot of people on the list, and they're all exonerated $5 per person. So Kathy, I'm sure, did all the necessary calculations. She has it to the penny. So I want to make a motion that we approve the exonerations of 401 residents in the total amount of $2,005 as presented by the tax collector.
Second that motion.
A motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there any correspondence, Ms. Manager?
No correspondence.
Okay, that takes us to our solicitor, Andy.
The first item on my agenda to discuss with you this evening are the zoning ordinance amendments that we've been working on for a while now. I circulated an updated draft to the board. Also included the York County Planning Commission comments to the prior draft. We have not scheduled this for a public hearing yet, so I wanted to get feedback from the board on these provisions, what to then make a determination whether any of the changes have to go back through the planning commissions for further review or it can be advertised. I think that the discussion that we need to still have relates to the roadside stands, which is starting on page 3 of what I provided to you. I note for you the red line that you see in this draft are the changes in the roadside stand provisions from the last draft that you saw. So those are not, the roadside stand provisions do not currently exist in the zoning ordinance. This would be new language, but I redlined what we had provided to you before and the changes we made based on comments from staff and also I think York County Planning Commission. So I would open it up for discussion on these provisions and any further changes to anything in the ordinance.
Would you like me to go down?
Please.
Okay, so, in the roadside stand ordinance, I'm just gonna go through pretty much, we got comments back from York County Planning Commission, and Andy addresses those in here. And then, we went to, prior to receiving those comments, we did have our planning commission review, these ordinance amendments. And then, of course, this roadside stand here, there were some recommendations, and some of which you'll see here in the roadside stand ordinance section. But while one in particular, permits not being required and the ordinance being more of a guideline, staff disagrees with, because this is we need to be proactive, not reactive. And then, of course, this is to prevent nuisance and to help monitor safety, clear sight distance of these stands where they're not out at the roadway or blocking sight distance from drivers, or making sure that there's adequate parking for people to pull off to visit said roadside stand. But, and then so what I'm gonna do just to go over is I'll tick down each one since this is super new. Right now, we have nothing that addresses roadside stands. Right now, if somebody did a roadside stand, it would be a farmer who is permitted to do that. Nobody else is permitted to do it without zoning relief. But this ordinance would allow residents to sell agricultural product in their front yard as long as they have a permit from the township. So one thing would be, you need to get permission from the owner if you're a tenant. And the next thing would be you have to sell only agricultural products which are grown or prepared on site or locally within 1 mile of the roadside stand. And then, of course, they shall abide by all Pennsylvania state health regulations. The next item is if the proposed roadside stand is located in a residential subdivision with a homeowner or condominium association, The applicant shall obtain and submit a statement from the HOA or condominium association confirming the roadside stand does not violate any HOA or condo association rules or regulations. That is a new one since it visited our planning commission, because one thing that planning commission mentioned was, there's so many different scenarios and how do you regulate that, and is this gonna be a bad thing in a development? And so that helps address the homeowners associations. The next item is temporary display structures shall be not greater than 64 square feet in size and no taller than 10 feet in height, and the area of sale shall be less than 100 square feet in area. And then the structures and surrounding sales areas located in the front yard shall be maintained in good condition at all times. No storage or fences shall be permitted in the front yard. The reason why we settled on 64 square feet is because of the size of lumber. It's 8 by 8, am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
8,
But
10, or
essentially,
12.
yeah,
I was
thank you.
wondering, that's pretty specific.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's so that you don't have a massive structure in the front yard. Not everyone has a very big front yard, and we're trying to make this reasonable enough for everybody to do without it getting big and out of control and overtaking a front yard pretty much. But the next item is temporary display structures must be no closer than 15 feet from any side or rear property line, set back at least 10 feet from any street right of way, and shall not block clear sight triangle. One additional off-street parking shall be provided for customers in addition to required parking for the existing use. Right now, for a single-family dwelling, you're required to have 2 parking spaces that are not on the road. So if you do one of these roadside stands, you would have to provide for an additional parking space. The next item is they shall abide by all requirements of Article 5, off-street parking and loading. However, loading and offloading shall not be conducted within the right-of-way and shall at all times be limited to a vehicle not to exceed 10 by 20. That's the size of a normal parking space for residential. So we didn't want gigantic tractor trailers or trucks coming to a residential development, for instance, and loading and offloading product that they got. That's just an example where we're trying to prevent nuisance. And then the next item is one sign no greater than 4 square feet is permitted and shall not be placed higher than the approved temporary structure when attached, or if freestanding must be placed no closer than 10 feet from the right-of-way and no taller than 5 feet in height. Sign must conform to specifications of Article 6, signs, once again, to limit the size and of a sign getting out of control with a giant sign that says eggs or something. But being reasonable to let everyone know that there's a, product for sale at the front yard. The next item is outside storage of equipment or parts thereof is not permitted. This is just one of those things where we don't want a front yard getting junked up. The next item is area of roadside stand must be kept clear of waste. Material waste may not be kept in the area of the roadside stand. The applicant shall obtain an annual renewal of the land use permit from the township on a form prescribed by the township. And then the last thing here is per the discretion of the zoning officer, if the use is deemed a nuisance or safety concern, the township reserves the right to place additional conditions or revoke the permit. And forgive me, I do have one more thing, the exclusions. We do exclude 2 items. The first one is agricultural operations as defined by the Pennsylvania Right to Farm Act. They're exempt from a couple of the different subsections because farms are different. For instance, they don't have to be limited to a small display structure. They can be much larger. They're not limited to 100 square feet of sales area. They can, once again, be larger. But they're also, we're also excluding temporary children lemonade stands and the like. That's also addressing something that the Planning Commission said. And we felt that that statement would help satisfy that we're not going out and busting children with lemonade stands. And then the only thing here, I mean, if everyone is okay, or if there's any discussion points you want to hit on what's presented, would be permit fees. And I do want to make a statement that we do not need a permit fee for this, knowing that these stands probably aren't going to make much money at all. So, I mean, there is an inspection and a plan, you know, a plan review of someone showing us where they're going to place this structure and how far set back from the road it's going to be. So there is some township staff work that's going to be involved here, just to make sure that that stand complies. But otherwise, it's up to the board on if you wanted to put a permit fee on this. That's all I have.
Who wants to go first?
Oh, the Sherman Street little farmer stand up there, is that grandfathered in?
Yes, that would be, there's less than a handful of these stands currently in our township that would be grandfathered in, yes.
But their produce isn't within a mile they put up there.
That is one section that I'm not in 100% agreement with. That was a newer addition to this because of what York County Planning Commission had stipulated or suggested or recommended.
I disagree with that as well. Early on in the season, corn season, you get the corn from Maryland. And some of it's pretty good.
That's what,
so,
that was my concern.
yeah.
It's also going to be very hard to regulate that and enforce it.
Yeah.
So,
A mile as a crow flies or a mile down the street.
yeah.
Second question I have then, does this affect Forge Hill Orchards when they pull their trailer up to the top of Starvey Road to sell strawberries?
No, that is
Agriculture.
that's an agricultural
okay.
operation, right?
All right. That's my two questions for now.
The last bullet point in that one section where you said zoning officer, the word two is missing in the typed version I have.
I have that as well. Yep. Thank you.
And I do kind of agree with that mile limitation. I mean, if that was a recommendation, not a requirement, why would we put it in there? I don't see the harm, given all the other controls that are in place. Like if someone brings a tractor trailer up and parks it in front of your little temporary stand, that's going to be a problem, and someone's going to complain about it, and then they would, I guess you pull their permit, so they couldn't do it anymore, right?
I don't
Or
know exactly how this is
fine.
all going to go down, but essentially, this is going to be a trial and error where we work out the kinks this year, and if we find any problems, then we'll come back for an amendment to the ordinance to adjust. But right now, I'm not 100 on how that would work. I mean, we'd probably give notice to them. We would be required to give them, you know, just one notice saying if you do this again or we catch you, then we would issue citation or, yeah.
Okay.
Or in this case, this would be a civil complaint, yeah.
But it would follow along with something like this, I assume, some procedure would already have in place?
That's correct. This would be the zoning ordinance code enforcement procedure, yes.
That's all I had.
I'd like us to strike that 1 mile limitation in the ordinance.
I agree. And I want to discuss you got all of them that I was going to, with the exception of, I know there's some considerable thought given to the 64 square feet size. But if I had a little 10 by 10 pre-built shed that I put on a non-permanent foundation and I'm selling tomatoes out of it, that's not too big. So I think that's just pretty, 64 square feet is restricted.
Well, then should it be something about, because I guess I see your point, but if you have a postage stamp, you know, land, like it's 5,000 square feet or whatever, some of them, I've seen some lots as small as 9,000 square feet. Who knows what the front yard is? I mean, 10 by 10 could be a pretty significant piece of that front yard too. So
Yeah.
could you do, you know, like the lesser of something, some percentage of the front yard, but it can't exceed. So it could be like, can't exceed 100 square feet, or can't exceed the lesser of, 10% of your front yard area, or 100 square feet, something like that. Because that gives you some flexibility there.
It's not a hill for me to die on. I mean, we're gonna keep them small, and that's okay. And through the growing season this year and the selling season, if we find out complaints that, man, I can't put anything up to 6, that's one thing where we can
Yes.
massage. So
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
okay with it.
So someone, someone put,
Sure, Joyce.
Signage. Indirect light only?
One more
Right.
time for me?
Bright neon lighting.
Flashing
Oh,
strobes.
they're required to follow all of Article 6 of signs still, which does address that, yes. Yep.
And I can just.
That's a good question.
going back to the square footage of, I have a 64-foot square building, I have my wares in there, can I put extra stuff outside, put a whole stack of pumpkins and,
On a table.
As long
Yeah.
as your area of sales isn't exceeding 100 square feet.
There you go.
Yep.
okay,
You're just gonna get
Just
wet when you
testing
go out
it.
there to sell a pumpkin. Okay,
all right.
so we can make those changes? And what do you need, Andy, for this? Are we gonna send this to a hearing in March?
Well, so I think the board, I guess my question for the board is, do you want to send this back to the planning commission at this point with staff's changes, or do you want to schedule? it for
planning
the-
commission?
Yeah, that would be,
Would that trigger us having to send it back to York?
I would send it back to both if you were gonna do that and put it back through that full process. I would be okay with the changes that were made. I mean, a lot of them were recommended by the planning commissions. I would be okay just advertising it as well. I think it's whether you want any further comments.
Let's send it back through. I very much value their opinions and input.
One other thing I had a note on, in section E, it says notwithstanding subsection A within the C and I districts. Assume C is commercial and I is industrial.
Yes.
Why don't we say that unless that's defined somewhere else? Because I didn't
Okay.
stumble across it elsewhere. It's if you're making a change, it just might as well.
Okay, yeah, we can make that change.
It's minor things.
Any other changes we want to consider? Do you need a motion to send it back? Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
I forgot about that. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Hey, well, when I talked to you about this back a couple of months ago, there was a reference to a guy up there wanting to sell wood,
Mm-hmm.
okay? You said it had to be agricultural, so I traded offline, that wood is in fact an agricultural product.
No, what I meant was he has to be an agricultural operation in order to have a stand without zoning relief at this time. But with this new ordinance section, he would be able to have that stand up there. Mhm.
Okay, but he's harvesting wood more than an hour away. Can you say, you're not here, that you got that, take your product within 1 mile?
We suggested that be stricken.
Mhm.
As far as size, if you remember, the stand over on Meeting House Road, that's been there 40 years.
Mhm.
And about 20 years ago, in the fall, it was all full, they had outside of features. It was all full of pumpkins, lots of pumpkins. And Bengals took them on, smashed them on Meeting House Road. They built that full building. So, at 64 feet is not small. I mean,
They're exempt. They're a pre-existing nonconformity.
yeah, but if some, new people, if someone wants to sell things, they really can't do it outside of income. Just think about it. And you talked about having, like a 6-month limit. I didn't hear you say it tonight, but you still still a 6-month selling limit.
Nope, nope, it's, just an annual permit.
I mean, I really think you're really going overboard. I mean, if, you know, somebody has a garden, let's say you have strawberries, and one day they're not ripe, nice sunny afternoon, the government's doing strawberries are ripe, you're gonna put 6 boxes out on the road. What's the big deal? Set a table up, put 6 boxes out on the road. I mean, why must you even have a permit? Goodness gracious, why must you have a permit to do something like that? I mean, we gotta cater to the residents who just want to sell small items. Out of the garden, food gets right, we put it out and sell. Strawberries get right, we put it out and sell. Don't you think you're overselling this?
No, because of our more recent, probably within like the past 2 years, a lot more people did start just throwing stands up. And we did have about maybe 3 or 4 of them where they were pretty big structures and they were selling and having people come to their property to buy product. It was a lot bigger than what you're talking about. And I know what you're talking about because I live in the country and I see that all the time as well. But here we've been experiencing and having to cease and desist when people are throwing structures up in their front yards to sell products. So, and they're not small. But so this ordinance is preventing that from happening, from these getting too big and to have them placed at a safe distance and such.
But would it stop what Bob's suggesting?
No, they'd
Someone-
still be able to do it.
I mean, so we're not preventing that person
Yeah.
that sits a little table out because today, like you said, the strawberries were ripe, and so they put out a couple boxes.
But do they need a permit?
Doesn't sound like they did.
But they would need a permit for that, but if this could be a free to very small, depending on how much the board sets on this, it could be $0 permit. It would just, that would be up to the board's discussion here on what they would wish to do, but I'm not proposing that. I'm,
Put out 10 boxes of strawberries and sell for $3 a box or something.
We already discussed it.
Yeah, we already discussed, Bob, we're not gonna require a fee.
Well, I'm not gonna say anymore, I just think it's an overkill for the residents. But you have to,
I always say rules are created because someone ruined them for everybody else. That's pretty much how we got here.
thank you.
Yep.
So one thing, before we move on, just that I want to make sure I don't forget to bring up, but in subsection 4, I don't think you had discussed this, or in section 4 on page 5, the area for the deer fence, I do still need a decision on what area you want to allow.
That's where I was having that, let's see if I have the brain cramp again, 1 second. Because you have that bracket like 100 square feet per acre, and I'm thinking, wouldn't it be better to go with lesser of X square feet per acre, or maybe 25% of an area? So I think like for a property like yours, 100 square feet per acre might be fine, but maybe 25% would be better if you were doing more. Oh, sorry. It's on the deer fence that was mentioned, and so it's in here. I guess the draft came back as bracketing how much to do. And one of what's in here now is like 100 square feet per acre. Another one was throwing out 25% of the area of the rear yard. And my thinking is, why couldn't you do the lesser of X, or and Y? Would that be better? Sure.
So my question is, do you have a requirement on how large somebody's garden
Good question. I don't know.
I missed the question. What was the question?
Do you have a requirement on how large somebody's garden can be?
No.
Sure. We don't, like Bob was alluding to, we're maybe getting in the weeds. I just want to make sure that people that have a large garden can put deer fences in so they don't waste, they don't eat all their produce. But
So, and if there's not a maximum on it, there's nothing that would prevent them from putting a 15-foot high fence around their entire property perimeter. So that's, just take that into consideration. That was the reason for putting the limit on the area enclosed by the deer fence. Now, theoretically, your entire rear yard could be a garden too.
Could you stipulate that that it's a cultivated, planted area? I mean, if I choose now, and also I would assume that has to still maintain the rules of the fence, border fence that you have, so like you can't put it right on the property line.
So that's the next change. Then
But if I chose to actually grow food through my whole backyard and I'm not breaking any other laws, why can't I fence that off?
I think it's a valid comment.
And again, is this really something you guys want to get involved in? Like, I agree with Bob, a lot of this just seems like overkill.
well, I often said, and the reason was that we go through these yearly now to see if there's any obsolete, anything needs changed, anything needs enhanced. I totally feel that us going through this exercise, and it seems like we're getting off into the weeds, but it differentiates us from other townships and municipalities.
And this came up in discussions too. Somebody had raised the question mostly about the fact of, fencing in and protecting an area that you're gardening. And if you don't define what that fence is, I could put up a slatted fence potentially.
Respectfully, I disagree. I think it came up because of the height of the fence issue with the ordinance.
Okay.
Am I correct, Bob?
Right, this is,
No, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
this is actually relaxing the standards that are in your ordinance currently. The simplest thing to do would be to just not provide for deer fences and let your ordinance go the way it was, where they would just be prohibited outright. So this is making an accommodation for that and loosening the regulations.
Because right now, the way it stands is I couldn't have a fence over X feet, right?
That's
6
right.
feet?
Yeah.
So that was your point that came up. So I stand corrected on that.
Get into all the details and the weeds. Can't you just say, if it's a deer fence, and that's the exception of being higher, it needs to be limited to your garden. I totally understand you don't want somebody to have a deer fence around the perimeter of their property.
But it could because the fence is around.
Well, it goes in to say what it could be constructed of. So the intent is that it becomes basically invisible to the eye. So you're not obstructing someone's vision. As far as height goes, I don't think it says, there's no limit on height if I'm reading this correctly. It was mostly about limiting the area that it could cover.
Did it say 15 feet?
I don't think it says 15 feet unless I'm missing it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the second
not higher than
sentence.
15.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I'm missing it. Sorry. So 15 feet, I mean, is that
And most
high?
fences aren't 15 feet.
Okay, so, but at least you can go that high if somebody wants to go that high. And then it's really gets down to, so I'd say, I think it's important to define what it can be constructed of, so it doesn't become an eyesore,
I have no issue with that.
right? As far as height goes, I think certainly putting an upper limit makes some sense. And if they're only 8 to 10 as it is, then 15 gives somebody flexibility to go higher. Then the last piece really gets into the point that you raised, Herb, is like, is there some restriction on how much area that you cultivate? And maybe that's the better way to say it, is that, you can surround your cultivated area, your garden area. I mean, if you define it that way, I wouldn't be opposed. And then would it be fair to say that the next piece down where we say you can't put a fence on the property line would prevent that? Deer fence or no?
I don't think so. I mean, the way it's written now, there wouldn't be a limitation on that. I mean, it may be better to even do it that way. We could say that the fence designed to exclude deer may be erected in the rear yard for the protection of home gardens. Now, that limits it to that purpose. I don't know that there would be other things.
And I think it's fair to say that that does not include shrubbery and plants around the front of your house or anything like that.
Well, it said rear of the yard, so,
Well,
but yeah,
So, and so if we make that change, then I think we could delete the size limitations on it. Just be limiting the purpose of it, unless you want, unless you still want a maximum size, saying it
I
can't be.
think it's a valid, because my next door neighbor, he cultivates a portion of his ground, and I know he's got some netting over his, I think blueberries or something type of deal. Obviously not. He still gets deer in there, but he's fine, never bothers me, and, he's got plenty of acreage to go do what he needs, but I find it highly unlikely that, let's put it this way, you'd probably be really good friends with your neighbor if you could cultivate right up to the line. Turn your tractor around or whatever.
So what do we have a problem with H?
So H is really, long story short, it's the size limitation.
Well, that's 100 square feet per acre, 25% of the area of the rear yard. So if we eliminate that and just put it somewhat succinctly that it just encompasses the garden area. And let's just keep it simple.
And that's fine with me. We can do that. I mean, from an enforcement perspective, what is a home garden could become a question or something that could be,
I'd say
Could-
sorry to interrupt you, but I'd say go to Webster's dictionary and look up the definition of a garden. I mean, why redefine it?
Yeah, I don't think that we have to define it. I mean, that's,
No.
Christie, if you're okay making that determination, or you think staff's okay making that determination, I don't think we need to overcomplicate it. It's just gonna be different than just measuring an area. It's less objective.
So according to Webster's dictionary, a small piece of ground used to grow vegetables, fruit, herbs, or flowers.
And the intent and the reason behind this particular one is that we've had some requests from residents that want to put deer fences in. They don't want to go against our zoning regs. And so we're, like Andy said, we are eliminating some of the Ts and Is to cross the dot so people can put up the clear fence that you can hardly see it. People do it, they're there, but an overzealous zoning officer could take it to court. So,
Okay, I
So we need to make
made
some
that, I made that change already so that it reads now, a fence designed to exclude deer may be erected in the rear yard for the protection of a home garden in compliance with this subsection. We eliminated any size limitations. I think that's, I'm fine with that change.
okay.
Works for me.
Yeah.
And could we just summarize quickly what the changes were in roadside stand, just to make sure I got all of them? Right, the elimination of the 1 mile.
Yeah, eliminate, can be off-site. There's no stipulation that you can only sell stuff generated on site.
Oh, and Andy, on subsection D, where it says no storage or fences shall be permitted in the front yard, in our fence ordinance, we do permit a front yard fence, but it's just not allowed to be taller than 4 feet and has to be see-through and, there's some other things. It can't be in, yeah, there's a whole bunch of little stipulations for it, but does that contradict that ordinance section at all then?
Well, we could just, how about if we just eliminate the reference to fences?
Okay.
We don't have to say anything about fences there.
It's
Yeah,
covered
because
elsewhere.
I seen that when I was going through the packet, and if I wanted to put a split rail fence up at the front yard of my roses,
Mm-hmm.
that would, that's
Right.
what we were discussing there.
Right. And then the next item was subsection L, after reserves the right, the word "to" needs to be inserted. And then my last one is that under exclusions for the agricultural operations, when it says exempt from subsections, letter C as in Charlie, should become D as in dog.
And what was that second change? My computer was running out of power, so I had to.
Oh, are you talking about the exclusion one? C should become D?
No, the one before that.
Oh, subsection L, after reserves the right, the word "to" should be inserted.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And then the last thing that I just want to say is, no disrespect to Planning Commission or anything, but they did review this already. We did make most of their changes except for the biggest one, which was the permitting. So if anything, we just made it better. And then additionally, York County Planning Commission wouldn't have any other input because we actually changed what they recommended already, aside from you getting rid of the within 1 mile of the roadside stand. And then lastly, this is just gonna prolong it even more, and we've been doing this for over a year now. So staff recommends that, we advertise for a hearing for March. But it's up to you, completely up to you.
I have one more comment on section I then, because that's the fence on the property line.
Yes.
We do need to talk about that too, right?
So that's, yeah, so that's in addition to the fence regulations that would apply to any fence. And it says that no fence shall be installed on a property line unless both property owners are applicants on the fence permit. Following the erection of the fence, the property owner shall be jointly and severally responsible for maintenance and repair unless otherwise provided in an agreement recorded against both properties.
So just to play devil's advocate, if I place the fence a 1/16 of an inch off the line, it's technically not right against the line.
Yes, that is right.
So, and I think we had those discussions before, like where do we draw that line? And I guess part of me it's having that relationship with your neighbor, number one. If you don't have it though, to me there should be, if you're within X amount of space of the property line and you want to put in a fence. I'm just trying to figure out what's the right thing there. And I'm not sure. And I know this was debated quite a bit. Yes, Bob? Thought Bob had something there.
Well, we had talked about that, fences.
Right.
I think I heard you say now you have to, the neighbor would have to sign off if you wanted to put it along the line.
Mm-hmm.
That could be 3 neighbors, this side, that side, and that.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as, we also talked about not allowing, if it's on the line, not allowing it to move it onto the private property. Back there at, Ford Meadows. So if it, let's say it's 3 feet off. That would allow property owners to do it on the other side, maintain the area, put in the fence. Then that gate they can open on that side because it's open on that property owner's land. But you put it on the, what you say, a 16 inch off.
Well,
That's that gate is going right on the side of the
Right.
property. I don't think that.
well, and I was doing that because the way it was written, it's kind of like I could get right up to it and I don't need that permission. Whether I step on someone else's property to maintain it or not, that's a trespassing issue. And again, it's that kind of balance to where do you, what I'm struggling with is the fact, like, if I wanted to put a fence up in my property and put it right up against the line, today, the way the township zoning ordinances are, I could do that and I wouldn't need to get a sign off on anything type of deal. But let's say we put this in place, okay, I set it an inch off. Well, I don't need to go get anything, I'm well within my rights. But now I still created a potential issue to maintain that, I've got to trespass on someone else's property. And if I,
That is how your ordinance is written.
yeah, exactly. And then so I trying to balance that off with, well, okay, if I want to place that fence within a foot, 18, or like you said, Bob, 3 feet, that certainly gives me more than enough room to take a mower down through there, cut it without trespassing, maintain that fence. But then, is that the right place to set that? Because now if I want to be anything less than 3 feet, if I want to be with within less than 3 feet of the property line, now I've got to go ask and get all these sign-offs. Go ahead.
So I've thought about this a lot since we talked about plan commission. And what you were saying or alluding to was exactly my thought was, if you have that ordinance and you have two neighbors that are saying, okay, we put it on the line, we're all happy, we love each other, then that's great. But without that permission, exactly what you're saying is, if you're 6 inches off the line, you're still putting that person in a situation where to maintain the other side of their fence, they have to trespass. Now, I
Yeah.
know we've got pre-existing conditions of that all over the township,
Right.
but I think we should stop it now. And to me, the logical step is you at least should be able to get your lawnmower and your weed whacker on the other side of that fence on your property and maintain it.
Yeah, and I'd be cautious, because my mower is a tractor with a 60-inch deck. What we're talking about is, and that's where I struggle with, is it 3 feet, is it 2 feet? Because you could probably argue that, a small mower is probably 20 inches wide. And you could get down there and maintain your property without technically trespassing.
And one other thought, I don't remember who said it, but at one of the meetings, somebody said, well, that's not fair to people that have small yards. And
I think that was me.
and I acknowledge that, but you decided to buy a small yard if you bought a small yard. And it still doesn't-
Or that's what your budget allowed you to do.
I get it, but that still doesn't give you the right to trespass on somebody else's property.
And you're right, and that's where I kind of, that's where I struggle a little bit, like what's the right thing to do? And
If I may.
Yeah, please.
Being from the city of York, one thing that having the space like that for 3 feet on each side kind of deal, you're creating alleyways. And if you have, even though they're not maintained by the township or anything, but this is where you get more crime, okay? And honestly, seriously, this is one of those things. So when you have everyone throwing up a 6 foot tall fence and everyone is 3 feet from the property line on both sides, now you have a 6 foot or even a 4 foot, whatever you end up going with, 2 or 3. But now you have this space, and once that starts to become a thing in the developments, and that's what we're requiring them to do, now you have these alleyways where kids are going through or whoever and hiding behind these fences. And I disagree with that
No,
personally.
that's a valid point. I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way, so I appreciate that perspective.
Well, and I've seen it firsthand, and me being someone who used to do that.
What?
What? But it's true.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that I just wanted to throw that out there as well, guys.
Go ahead.
And I think that is a valid particularly in developments in a rural area, if somebody, if my neighbor put a fence up, and I've gotten that around my property, there's places where people have fences up. I'm not gonna put a fence right up against their fence, it's already fenced off. So, but I still think they should be able to maintain the fence without going on my property. So-
And that's the tough struggle, because now that she raised that, I hadn't thought of that perspective, because I never really was
So
exposed to it.
by allowing people to do that and having gates that allow them to get on the other side, is the township endorsing trespassing?
Well, and I guess the thing here is, it's about getting that kind of sign off, so I guess I wouldn't prevent somebody from putting the fence on the line. It's just, where do you start to need to ask for that permission? So you and I have adjacent properties. We have a great relationship. Daryl's also your neighbor. You don't care for him that much. You let me put my fence up against the line. Daryl wants to do one. You're like, yeah, not so much. You got to stay on yours. You let me come over and I can walk on your side of the property, maintain my fence, because we have that warm, fuzzy relationship type of deal. I mean, it's just kind of where you trigger that request for permission, notwithstanding it's a valid point.
So it sounds like one of the concerns that you're hearing is the gate and access via the gate. I mean, we could say, no fence shall be installed on a property line. We could add something to that also includes, or with a gate that will encroach on a property line, unless both property owners are applicants on a fence permit. Something to that effect to eliminate the possibility of a fence, within 12 inches of the property line as a gate that opens across the property line. I think from there, it also becomes a private, if you want to exclude your neighbor from your property, you can do that, and there's a process for doing that. And you have rights when it comes to that don't really involve the township.
And I think the thing here too is, like Christy was saying, and the situation at Troy's place in Rolling Meadows, right? Where you've got neighbors that are in that development, they all have lot sizes anywhere from maybe, a quarter of an acre to just under a half acre. And so they want to maximize, and they've got decent relationships. They want to put their fence and share it. But then it's, butting up against some large property where folks tend to think it's theirs and trespass, yeah.
Is there any other issues for the ordinance changes that we need to discuss? Because I think if we send this back through to the planning commissions, which now I'm truly convinced we need to, and let's pay some special attention to the fence issue and come up with some possible ideas.
Can I just raise one other question with fence? And this is basically a conversation, Andy, that you and I had. I think you mentioned in the meeting, and we talked about it a little more afterwards, the whole spotters rights thing. So if you have a fence that goes right up or close to the property line, and that neighbor's coming over and continuing to use your area without you giving them permission, ultimately, couldn't they claim spotters rights and take that ground?
Well, I mean, after 21
21
years,
years.
it does have to be adverse. They would have to prove that they didn't have permission to do it.
Well, I don't think Troy owns them on his property.
Right, well, in that case, yes, it is. I mean, after 21 years, if he allows them to continue to do that, then yes, they could have a claim that their property line has been adjusted by that. So the easiest way to prevent that from happening is you actually give them written permission to do it. As long as they're there with permission, they can't ever claim the rights to that land. But if they're there adversely and they haven't been given permission, then after 21 years, they can make that claim.
I know that's a long period of time, but how do you reconcile the fact that I don't want the neighbor over there, but yet I have to give him permission so he can't take my yard away?
Yeah, you don't, I mean, So right now, the ordinance allows fences on the property line. This would just be clarifying the permission that you have to get for that. I tend to agree with Christie about forcing them to be off the property line because you do have that no man's land, and depending on what kind of fences they are, grass may not even grow in between them if you have two fences 4 feet apart. And aesthetically, it just becomes, for subdivisions, it becomes unappealing as well to have that many fences. Right, right. So, I would say if you're gonna do anything, either not make any change and just say if a fence goes up on a property line, that's a private dispute between the property owners and they have to figure it out. Or make the change that we're suggesting and, maybe add that you can't have a gate that encroaches on a property line either. So you can't just pull it, a 1/16 of an inch off of the property line and then put a gate in that, that would encroach on the other side. But, keep something, either completely take I out or keep something similar to what we have and just tweak it a little bit to prohibit gates that encroach on the property line.
So basically, you're saying that if my neighbor and I get together and he wants to put a fence and I'm cool with him putting a fence and we get our heads together and decide what style fence and we put it up, I help share the cost. That's the ultimate way. The other way is that he puts a chain link fence up and I don't like it. I put a vinyl fence up. I can put my vinyl fence right against his chain link.
Currently, yes. Currently.
On the shared gate issue, is that transferable? Like Dean and I have a shared gate, but then I move out and new neighbors come in.
Well, that's why we put the requirement in that there be an agreement recorded against
Okay.
both properties. That way, whoever moves in is subject to the same agreement.
So that's what we got. Yes, sir, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to clarify one thing. I had mentioned the development, and he mentioned the purpose name. But we're not doing it just for that area. Okay?
No,
No, it's
no.
for the, we're trying to do the right thing across the township.
We're doing it for the township.
Township.
Right.
Yep.
In the future, there will be more housing development.
Well, and I think that's,
So I just wanna make that clear that this is for the township, not a specific area or a specific person.
we're.
What? I thank you for that clarification. Yep. Okay, so let's send this back through because I want to hear their opinions one more time on this. We did, we have been, going through this exercise for quite a long time, but,
I don't know if this is outlined, but if you're sending it back through, I'm gonna request, is there a possibility that we could see a list over maybe the last year or two of issues where roadside stands have actually been an issue?
I don't,
Is that something we can be privy to?
I don't know if we have the data to give you a list of that. I think a lot of this was, there was a few instances and we see the potential for it to get bigger. And we want to get ahead of the situation, be proactive instead of reactive. I think that, am I speaking correctly there, or do you have?
No, you're correct. I mean, we do have, we'd have to look them up, but yeah, we do have a
Then
list.
if we have them, let's
It's
give it
not
to
a
them.
printed out list, but I'd have to figure it out. I just wanna, okay, never mind. Nope, I'm good.
So you can provide somewhat of a list?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so we're not gonna, motion for March.
No.
So that moves on to our noise ordinance amendment.
So,
Yeah.
and just to be clear, I'm recirculating this through the planning commissions. That's what you want to do?
Yes.
Okay. Next is the noise ordinance, or an update to the noise ordinance. There were two proposals given to the township. I think my recommendation ultimately, just based on qualifications mainly, was to use Eddie Duncan from Paxwood Associates. The cost came out pretty similar. And I will just mention too, Eddie's cost, if you read his proposal, which was informal and just an estimate, but he was suggesting basically giving us a rewritten noise ordinance. Even the one we sent him from East Goshen Township, he thought some of the things were pretty outdated. So I think what I would ask him is, does he have an ordinance he's used in other municipalities that he would recommend, and see if he has a proposal to provide the whole thing. The cost was about the same for the two consultants. So, so again, my recommendation was just to go with Eddie and see if we can get something from him to get his input on it.
Can you also ask if they have any that are like county court tested?
Yeah, I can ask him if he has any that he knows of being tested that way.
So going into a contract with this company, that would allow us, and correct me if I'm wrong, that would allow us to, we have some more industrial areas going to be built in our township. We'd have in-house counsel, so to speak, to go out and do sound studies for us, independent from the developer doing their own.
Yes, I will say, just bear in mind, he is in Vermont, but I have him travel down here. I mean, I've had him down here numerous times this year for hearings on projects that we've been working on and to do testimony on sound analysis. He also does a lot of sound modeling. So, that's something to potentially consider as we do these amendments, depending on uses that come into the township. You can a lot of times model the sound that is going to be put out by certain components of the buildings before they ever get built.
So for instance, I'm sorry, were you?
Oh. Say something.
No,
I have another question.
Say, for instance, we have, hypothetically, we have a building going that's AI. And it needs a lot of cooling, which creates a lot of sound. When the plan is being considered, is this company have the ability to come in and look at the plan beforehand and give us suggestions?
Yeah, what I use him for on a fairly regular basis is to do software modeling of sound components in a project. So now to do that, he can't just take a plan and do that. He has to have equipment specifications. Like if it's a chiller system, he has to have information on the chiller. He has to first be able to identify what parts of the building will make noise or make sound, and then have the specifications of that equipment to know what sound they'll produce. But once he has those things, he can, based on topography, building component, he can model what sounds will be propagated from that. So, and it's a pretty slick model that he produces with that shows, it'll show the surrounding area, and it'll have actual, lines showing what the sound will be at different distances. So yes, he can do all of those things.
So to finish my thought on that, is that sound, I'm taking THL as an example of some of the sound problems that we had with our industrial partners. this would be more of a proactive approach to, instead of us being reactive and bringing somebody in to do a study after the fact.
Right.
Got it?
But this is first and foremost about rewriting our sound ordinance
Right.
to bring it up to modern day.
I was thinking
What-
beyond that.
Which is the next phase. So whatever next big thing comes in type of deal, we look at their plans, we'd want to ask more specifically, what point would you, that builder, know the equipment that's going to produce the sound, and then engage with this party and get an estimate of what that would potentially cost. But then that would be on our dime, would it not?
No, I think you could require the developer to do that. I think you could then use someone like this to review the sound study that they do and the analysis that they do. The benefit of that at the end of the day is you then have a baseline.
Mhm.
If there is a problem, you can go out and you can measure from that baseline. And if the results are different, it's much easier
Okay.
to enforce.
This ordinance is created and adopted. Would we have a business that, any business be grandfathered in from the noise level they already created?
That's a good question and a fair question. It's not a zoning ordinance. So, I think there would be probably limits to what you could ask them to do, but they wouldn't necessarily be grandfathered in. So, I'm trying to think of other examples where, I guess, with, something like peddling and solicitation licenses, just because, you had yard sales before the ordinance was changed to require a permit, doesn't mean that you don't ever have to get a permit. So, there's certainly a gray area there as to whether, at what point is it regulating the land use as opposed to just equipment, but, I think there probably would be some leeway there to enforce new standards against existing properties. You'd have to test it, I think.
PP&L, they use explosives sometimes to clean their boilers. Is that taken into account and exempt them? It's not every day, it's just the cleaning process.
I think that's something that we'd have to, I think, bring that up when we're looking at a draft. And yeah, I mean, some things like that probably do have to get taken into account. I think his preference is, so there are ordinances that regulate instantaneous sounds, and there's ordinances, and like an ordinance with an absolute decibel level is regulating instantaneous sounds, because that level is probably going to be high enough that if it was a constant sound, it's not going to reach that level. However, you may, and he may suggest an ordinance that regulates instantaneous sound and then also regulates constant sound, because 50 decibel constant buzzing may be just as much or more of a nuisance than a one-time 70 decibel, sound or explosion or something like that. So I think that's a good discussion to have when we have a draft, and I'd be curious to see, how he suggests, if he suggests, different limits based on different types of sounds. That's a question.
Yeah, don't forget, the vision I have for this is that when we review a plan, we review everything. You calculate the stormwater, how quick it'll empty based on certain data. We could do the same thing with sound on every plan that they gotta meet. This is what they're going to emit as a sound. And base that model on whether we approve the plan or not. I think it's very important that townships start doing that.
Yeah, and I think you can put the onus on the developer in a noise ordinance to say that, the developer has to meet the sound, has to establish that they can meet the sound requirements in the ordinance.
So then that would create us changing construction specs and sort of stuff.
I don't think that it does. I think it just requires that you have a sound ordinance with those levels.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Your still require the disturbance two or more persons.
It, yes, is the answer. Yeah. So that can be changed too.
My question is, why is it? I understand, you one person has a vendetta against somebody else, but at the same point in time, it disturbs one person, you may not do the locale where the noise is coming from, may not disturb the second.
If I,
Neighbor having a pool party and the pool faces my bedroom, and they're loud and screaming, yelling, and carrying on, well, it only affects me, it doesn't affect people.
so I would call 911. The officer would come to my door and say, hey, I have a problem here with noise. Would that officer make the second person?
Well, so any of those standards where it's a subjective standard as to what is a nuisance is going to be difficult and very challenging to enforce. There's a lot of ordinances written that way, but Daryl, you've probably been through this over the years.
Yep.
That's a very difficult one to enforce. I mean, probably the police are gonna go to the neighbors and ask them to be quiet but it's probably not gonna go any further than that, or it's gonna be difficult to. I mean, all
That's
of
your
these
point.
standards, if you have the objective standard in there, it's an objective standard, but it still has to be measured. So, so it's not a subjective standard, and it's always going to be difficult to enforce a subjective standard.
Mr. Crodehouse, I'm sorry.
Complain about the state of noise, you have to go round up your neighbors to complain about noise, it's kind of, like, back here lives, where he lives, the reefer truck is sitting back there running the refrigeration meter, so I wouldn't next to him, bothers him, it doesn't disturb me, because I don't hear anything unless he sound, and it's not fair to him, but maybe it's tolerant noise, because he doesn't have two neighbors who get together and complain about it. Just a thought.
Yeah. Mr. Crodehouse.
Yeah, I'm still having a lot of problems with your noise ordinance. Now, we hear the noise inside our house. The noise is not generated on my property, it's not generated on your property, on either side of my house, it's coming from behind us. Now, I know there's been a lot of surveys done, they say there's within the level of stuff. You stand outside my back door, or inside the house, you can hear this noise. You walk to the middle of my yard, you can't hear it. You go back to the hill, you can hear it again. I think there was an echo chamber created in there where the noise comes in and bounces back and forth. So I'm starting to think, was the township partially responsible for creating this issue? Because I mandated that DHL put that big hill in back there to hide the warehouse, creating this echo chamber where this noise comes back in. And you said refrigeration units are very loud. Well, that whole warehouse is one big refrigeration unit with their climate control and their freezers in there for the vaccines and stuff like that. Plus on December 26th, it was very bad, the noise. They had 19 refrigeration units parked on our side of the building. So I decided to walk over to the other side because at one time they said they were going to try and keep most of their trucks on the other side. Walking up the property line there, Hewitt's on that fence line, you just smell the exhaust coming across. Went to the other side, they only had about 4 units that were on an active dock on the other side. But they're not trying to alleviate anything going on. But I have a picture here of 19 trucks up there with refrigeration units. But like I said, I think that hill created an echo chamber in there. Noise coming back and forth. Maybe this guy can pick it out some other way or something. It's a vibration. Noise is not loud, but it's constant. I'll tell you what, my life has been a living hell listening to my wife because it pushed her over the edge. Really pissed.
I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you for your comment, though. So that, with all that, I want a motion that we approve Paxwood Acoustics. It's
Second.
highly recommended by staff, so
Paxwood
Paxwood,
Acoustics.
Paxwood, Acoustics. And the packet is in your,
You got a second on
yes, Daryl seconded it.
it? No, that's Dean.
Dean did.
Either one.
Dean,
One of the Ds.
is there any discussion on the motion?
No.
Call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 So I'll move forward with that, and Christie, maybe what we can do is get a kind of an initial call set up with him that we could just do as a Zoom call and talk about what options he may, if he has a better sample, and kind of
Okay.
let him know the things we want to address. We can include Byron.
If you could, let
And
me
that-
know. I'd like to be involved.
Okay.
Andy, anything else for your report?
No, I don't think so, unless there's any questions. Anything else on my report?
Remember the discussion.
No, we're gonna do that in March. Okay, is there any questions for Andy?
No.
Byron, you're up.
Willow Springs cul-de-sac, again, that design's done, I kind of went over it with Shane the other day again, to make sure he was okay with grading. At some point, we can, if the township staff's doing, it, or if we have to put it out for bid, that's ready to go as far as getting the cul-de-sac built.
Well, I was under the understanding through Shane that he wanted to do that.
That's fine, I mean, I can hand Shane plans tomorrow, and we can get moving on that if he wants to start earth moving, and put the silt fence up and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and Andy, we're gonna have to coordinate that through with our build schedule then for Canal Road betterment.
That's the one thing I have not done, we just haven't, I mean, I'm saying that our plans are ready to go for the Willow Springs cul-de-sac.
Okay, good enough.
Okay. Espresso way improvements, one of the things I've been working on to get included, when I talked with PennDOT, I think I mentioned this last month, at least in my report, all the survey work has been done. We had to get additional survey work for some comments as far as, did we need to extend some of our work up, or make sure the turning lanes and our distribution all works. But one of the things that PennDOT came back with was what they call SU, which is subsurface underground excavation, to identify existing utilities that are underground. Talking with PennDOT, because we're the municipality, they're going to probably waive the SU requirement. Now I can finish my plans. I've been trying to fight that because I would have to get a permit to do SU, just to go out there and do the subsurface investigation. Now they're saying I don't need a permit, and I'm just waiting for them to confirm that here this week to say, yes, you don't have to do SU, go ahead and move on with submitting the plans.
So I heard you correctly. SU is an acronym for subsurface.
Underground excavation.
Okay.
So basically what you do is you go out there and do like hydro excavation to go down and locate, they go out and mark the gas line, the electric line, or whatever, water line, whatever it is. They want to now know not just its location, its depth, and it doesn't affect any other utilities or any other construction.
And one call doesn't do that.
One call does not do that. So it's a process that I knew that. And I've talked with some of the other sub-consultants as far as traffic. we were one of the first people to get hit with that, and I'm saying, is this common? And they're saying that now all of a sudden they're starting to get that same comment from PennDOT. It's become a comment not just on municipal projects, but private projects that they want to identify. And the biggest one actually was Sherman Street, which is, I believe, on this list. Yeah, North Sherman Street HOP, because we're putting in storm sewer there. They wanted that more confirmed that our depth of our storm sewer does not adversely affect the depth of existing utilities. But again, they've considered that, and they're also saying that they may waive that with the exception of any cross pipe if we're changing the storm sewer going from one side of the road to the other. They may ask for that. So I've asked, what I've requested and said was that if you're asking for that, can you waive the PennDOT permit that requires us, because we do not have time to be waiting for a permit just to do so. So that's being considered. So as far as the those two HOPs, that's where we're looking at. So, under 9.5, the FEMA audit, pre-audit update. Christie, Kate and I sat in, we had our meeting, went about a little over an hour, so 15 minutes. Pretty much standard information. I did a summary report. I don't know if Christie supplied that to them.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so I just did a quick 1.5-page summary, and if you want me to email them to you, I can email it to you. Just again, it's some of the information that we had discussed earlier. I actually had one this morning at another township. I got more information to keep from the same people. Realistically, this program does not start until July of 2026. Okay, so the official audits won't happen until then. As I said in my summary report, everything will be, when they come out to do the official audit, everything's based on a 100-point schedule. What do you have done? Once they do their audit, they will score us and then tell us if we're below average, above average, and what we have to do to meet the requirements. There is a 4-page application that I had filled out and submitted. That's what they're reviewing. That's how they're basing their point system. I got more information on that today, and I'm going to update the information I had previously given to Christie. That way you can see what they're looking for a little bit more. But everything's, again, do we have to be doing stuff immediately? No, is the answer. I'm going to sit through training. Some of it's free, and because I'm the floodplain administrator, I'm going to do the training. It's about a total of about 40-some hours of training that I have to do for the 2 trainings. That way, we're covered as far as having all. We can check those boxes that are on this application that someone has gone through the training, is an official floodplain administrator, etc. So
Who has more hoops to jump through our boxes to check, PEMA or FEMA?
FEMA. Because FEMA's telling FEMA what to do, FEMA's telling us what to do.
So who's going to tell PEMA what to do when FEMA's not in existence?
I don't know. That's why I mentioned the date here, is that stuff's not starting until 2026. So things could change between now and 2026. So I'm saying we do not have to be rushing around at this point in time trying to meet some of the requirements. So again, those, I will supply an updated summary. That way you can see what they hit on. But again, it's more of, they hit us on fences and floodplains and fuel tanks, propane tanks. That's still a requirement. They want us to develop some applications, checklists on how, which we're doing the work, and they've acknowledged that. We are doing the floodplain work. We're just not saying the floodplain administrator is issuing the permit. It's part of our land use permit. They just want a separate line item for floodplain administrator to say this. In this case, it would be more paperwork for me, because I'm the floodplain administrator, and we just have to, maybe permit manager, Christie and I talked about this, maybe permit manager could be simply modified to include a floodplain. You know, we do a stormwater permit, we do a demolition permit, we do road occupancy, land use. Can that be, that module just be expanded to say, floodplain? And then that'll take care of 3 or 4 issues. You know, the one issue is adopting their new model ordinance. Again, I wouldn't even consider that for a year because it doesn't do us any good. Our floodplain ordinance is good enough at this point in time, and I don't see that. But again, it's pushing us towards enforcing, is the best word I can use, our floodplain ordinance to the letter of their law.
Which is going to be eye-opening.
It could be, yeah. So the process is, what I was told, there's 2,800 municipalities, I believe he said, in Pennsylvania. In July, they're going to start the inspections. So is York County first? I have no idea. They starting on the west and moving east? I don't know. They don't know. So it might be 6 months to a year before they get to us. You know, but it starts July. Technically, everything starts July of 2026. So, but I think, again, the simple free stuff I'm going to do as far as the training, that way I can check it if this moves forward.
Good.
And just to let you know, February 4th, there was a meeting here regarding Bruner Island. I was asked to attend, so I sat here with York County, DEP, all the people with the Talon. They're basically, they have a deadline of 2031. I'm doing this off the top of my memory here, but 2031 to remove ash basin 6 has to be completely gone. They've been slowly working at it because they sell the ash that's in ash basin 6. They sell to a concrete company it's part of their additives into a concrete mix. Concrete company can't take what they have fast enough. So what they're doing is they're moving ash basin 6 to another part of their site, one site, and then extending their, modifying their DEP and PDS permit, which is allowed. So, you know, so they're basically moving the problem from one point to another, but that lets them meet their requirements. And that's what this meeting was, just to let them know. I did get yesterday the plans for this, because I said the township wants to review the plans to see if it has any adverse effect. Are they filling in something there? Are they disturbing something there? You know, an existing stormwater basin, things like that. I just got it yesterday. So we don't have, you know, we can make a decision whether that's considered a land development plan. It's mainly earth moving. There's no buildings, no new anything else, but we need to decide whether, once I look at the plans, I can get together with Christie and we can decide whether or not a land use or a permit and or a land development plan may be required.
Does anyone know the location of ash basin 6? Is that the north end of the island, south end of the island?
It's on it's actually on the plant side, closer to York Haven side.
Okay,
Soccer field.
all right. Soccer fields are close. Just down the,
Well, it's not. It's
Good
the
3 wood
plan I
way.
saw. It's not the soccer field.
okay, good.
Okay, this is a site that's a smaller basin that's they've been already taking stuff out of. The new location is on the other side of the plant in their big open area.
Oh, okay.
So they will not be, my understanding of what they stated at the meeting, they will not be coming on the township roads. They will be driving all earth moving is done and trucking is done internally. And it just gets moved from one side of the plant to the other and stockpiled. But they're still going through the process of hauling it off site as quick as possible, but there's no, according to them, there's no incinerator in this part of the country that burns hot enough to just take it and burn it. The closest one's like in Montana. You know, it's more West Coast and things like that. So their option is to sell it to whoever they can. They have to sell it as a clean product, so it has to be clean. But again, the concrete company, it's a large company in New Jersey that they're hauling it to.
Is that it, Byron?
Yes, it is.
I have one question for you. North Sherman Street, what do you think the construction schedule is going to look like for that?
I would say I would hope to have the permit by beginning of May. And then if, I'm assuming we're not, that's PennDOT. So once we get the PennDOT, if I have the permit, they've been asking, I did get another email here from Farron, giving me more information and requesting more information on that pipe work because they're planning some work there for this summer, I believe. So I'm working on that now that I don't have to do the seal, hopefully. I can get him the rest of his information that I would say sometime. Again, they want to do it as part of their Sherman Street improvements this summer.
Okay, and then let me know, because I'd like to do a site visit there, because I'm very interested in how they're going to landscape that culvert down through there
Okay,
for the residents,
okay.
where they put the pipe.
All right. Well, my plan is replace the pipe where we're replacing pipe, right where it's at, just increasing the size. That's been the plan since.
Good. Any questions for Byron?
I do. I have a curiosity question regarding MS4. Do you know if there's a difference
way.
between like PennDOT putting down liquid salt versus spreading salt? Is one worse than the other as far as the MS4? And then do we also get charged for PennDOT doing state roads in our township for the MS4?
PennDOT has their own MS4 program. Of course. So state roads are not included in our, their impervious coverage is not part of our permit. They're a separate permit. They have tried to partner with some municipalities where they have planned projects, kind of like at the Cloverleafs. They're doing stormwater management and things at the Cloverleafs to offset what they have to do. As far as the salt, I just had a little bit of a conversation with that today. That's never been anything identified to me as far as an illicit discharge as far as, and I don't know if there's any difference in the salt and things like that. Again, I will say as part of MS4 right now, there is a review which I have not read. We have a 30-day or 60-day comment period on the next part of MS4, which will be volume, my understanding, which they want the municipalities to reduce volume by, I don't know if it's 10 or 12%, somewhere around there. So it will no longer be sediment. Okay, they're moving towards volume now. The talk was that they were going towards nitrogen and phosphorus, which may affect sewer plants. My understanding that's that. But before next meeting, I am going to sit down and read this information and find out and do any comments.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Byron. Okay, takes us to the manager's report to Northeastern New York County Sewer Authority minutes. I'd like to read something of interest for everyone. This is from the Northeastern New York County Sewer Authority Board. After careful consideration and discussion, the Sewer Board determined that an increase in quarterly rates is necessary. Rates will be increased from $137 to $145. I repeat that, 137 to 245. No change to 145. No change to commercial or industrial metered consumption rates. Schools and parks will be billed $145 for the first 15,000 gallons, but increase from $6 for every 1,000 gallons to $10,000 or $10 for every 1,000 gallons for consumption over 15,000 gallons. At the current rate, schools are not paying enough to break even with the cost to treat their flow. A Crown Lake Beaker motion was made to approve the 2025 budget with the increased base to $145.
6% increase.
Okay,
I have a question regarding that. Are the residential homes making up the differences for the schools? Do we know?
I wasn't at their budget meeting.
I'm not sure.
Because I don't think residents should be subsidized. We're already paying school taxes.
I can ask them.
Can you,
yeah, that's a
can you
good
check
question.
that, please?
Yep.
Anything else for the sewer?
Let's see. Yeah, just a curiosity question. Intermunicipal agreement expired in 2021. Isn't that a never-ending thing, or is this something we have to renew every now and then?
We came to a standoff pretty much.
Yeah, we came to a stand, we decided to walk away because the three municipalities couldn't come to agreement.
And basically, if they want us to sign off on any future funds, that's when that agreement will get brought back up again.
For the life of me, I'm trying to think what the disagreement was. Equalizing the rates, we did. They're spending a lot of money in Mount Wolf right now. It was at a time where when something went in the township, we had to pay a special rate to help pay for that.
Right.
For plants and pipes and all that. But all of a sudden, that just kind of got equalized when we equalized rates. So we never revisited the tri-municipal agreement, which maybe we should.
When's your next meeting?
The end of this month. I'll try and make it if I'm not tied up with work. I just haven't been able to go the past couple of months.
Well, let me know then.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, because I'm interested in that school question. So,
That's a good question, Darryl. Real good
Yes.
question.
But if the answer is no, and they raise their rates, then schools will raise the tax rates, so. Right?
Yeah,
Comes around, goes around.
they're gonna be raising the millage to 0.22 for the next 3 years for phase 2 of the renovations.
Yeah, so it's,
That takes us to the zoning officer's report. Or any questions?
I have none.
Land use 21, she's getting busy, and it's gonna be nothing but busier as the time goes on. Planning Commission. Assistant Zoning and Codes Officers report.
No questions for me.
Recreation Board, no report. Okay, that takes us, Andy, to a volunteer services tax program. I think we worked on that. That's pretty well wrapped up, ready to go to March.
Uh,
I
Good
think there
evening.
were a couple of changes that you wanted to discuss with them
Right.
related to the cap.
Some of these things were just, they needed to happen. So like, for instance, the word credits, between myself, Kathy, and Jen, we recommended that the word credits, was changed, and Attorney Tom Lang suggested refunds. So it's because the EIT tax could be a refund or a credit, and then the real estate is a reimbursement. So just to sync that up, we had that changed. And then, of course, the fire department found that there was a duplicate and something that was missing points. So that's getting stricken. And then the fire department also requested that instead of having or requiring just the chief or supervisor to sign off on these applications, they requested added language or authorized delegate as appointed by the chief. Because like, for instance, in Union, the deputy chief, I'm saying that right, correct? The deputy chief would like to sign off on these things instead because Chief Stevens is so busy, okay? And staff is okay with that. But then the biggest thing here is removing the $3,000 cap for when someone qualifies for both the earned income tax and the real estate tax. So we ran into an issue when we were doing the application and creating the application process. We were in touch with York Adams Tax Bureau and consulted with them. But essentially what this chalks up to is this is a flaw in our system where we wouldn't know if they reach the cap of 3,000 until the end of the next year. So for the 2024 tax year, I wouldn't know if they were going to exceed 3,000 until the end of 25 when I get the reports from the filing of income taxes from the York Adams Tax Bureau. But after consulting with Kathy, she basically assured me that nobody really even hits $500
It'd be rare occurrence.
for real estate. So yeah, we doubt that's even going to happen. There's already a cap on the EIT that York Adams Tax Bureau knows about, which is they're not allowed to exceed $1,500 in a credit or refund. So the point is they're not going to reach 3,000. Okay, so staff recommends removing the cap, and if you're okay with that, then yes, I would recommend making a motion to authorize MPL law firm to advertise for the March meeting.
Just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. So individually, one is the earned income tax relief, right?
That's correct.
And the other one's on property tax relief for the township.
For the township, yes.
Right, yes.
Very good.
Okay. And so while we have an individual limit of 1,500 on each,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
You're saying they would never exceed that.
Correct.
But on earned income, we have 1%, so can't do the math fast enough. I'd have to make over, $150,000 a year if my math right? I think so. To exceed 1,500.
But they're not allowed to. I'm not asking to remove the $1,500 cap though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the individuals, it's just the combined.
Correct.
So individually, you can control it. It was just the combination of the two is the problematic.
You got it, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, sorry, thank you.
Yep, no
Slow.
problem. Well, I probably didn't say it right.
No,
so,
no,
yep.
you did. I just wanted to individually fine, so.
Under
good with the
G, it
changes.
says the township secretary. Is that you or is that Deb?
Oh, that's me. I'm your
Is it
manager,
Salt?
secretary, treasurer.
Okay, I'm just concerned about your workload.
Thank you.
And 21. And maybe I had asked this before, but I've forgotten. The husband and wife filed for real estate. Okay, you're saying they can't exceed 3,000. The one on claim real estate, if they're both running for the prior company, and the other one claim the other tax.
Individually, the limits are set.
There was a combined, I thought. That's a really good question. I'm not sure.
But
Andy,
this
do you
is
know
an
that off the top of your head?
It's an individual thing, isn't it? So
I thought I did see something when it was combined, though. I mean, I could be wrong.
well, that's the thing you took out.
No, but the combined, that was for when an individual qualified for both. But this, what Daryl, I think, is saying is when you have a husband-wife duo.
Right.
I mean, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say if they're both on the, I don't think it would matter about the EIT. I mean, they're both filing, even if they were filing jointly.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You still
Yeah.
locally you still pay your whatever your wage is, your 1% for the township, so it'd
No,
just
I
be the.
think combined, like, for instance, I just filed jointly, the credit would only go towards total, the both of us.
You sure about that? Because individually,
Because I have like my
Yes, yeah,
daycare
yeah,
credit, for
I'm-
instance,
I mean, I'm looking at it, I mean, normally if that would be the case, there'd be two limits. There'd be a filing singly and filing jointly
Right.
limit. So
this is about.
I think the way that it's written, each would get the $1,500
Okay,
credit. And
that's a
I
good
think
question.
if both of them are earning the points, then
That's a good thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you want to discourage or
Just wanted to
penalize them for-
clarify, because this may come up in the future, and then.
No,
Yeah.
it's a valid point. I think the only
Yeah.
one would be the property tax thing, but again,
That
so you
also-
couldn't double dip on that one.
No,
Yeah.
right.
That would also apply for a boyfriend, girlfriend. One of them owns real estate, the other one's just living there.
That
Well,
never
in that
happens,
case,
so-
I mean, it
No,
would have to
it
be,
doesn't happen.
it would
You have to
have to
own
be the
and live in
tax,
it.
it would have to be the taxpayer.
That's right.
So if they're not on the deed, they wouldn't be eligible
Right.
for the credit. But
Right.
a
But then
husband and,
again, if they're both running, the other person could then claim the tax, not the real estate, but the
The
other.
earned income tax.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is this
Okay.
is predicated on the individual.
Yep.
And property tax is the only thing where they'd have to be on those records.
Correct.
And if it's jointly they're on the record, then again, they'd be limited to the 500 or whatever, 1,500 cap that we have.
That's correct.
Well,
Because
I-
it's only on what they paid.
yeah, I mean, currently, I don't think that, like, if they're both jointly on the title to the real estate and they get a tax bill to both of them, they'd each have 1,500 towards that credit. Now, that's a lot of township property tax.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
would have
yeah.
to be,
that'd be-
Highly unlikely,
Yes.
but again, if they owned it jointly, they'd only get one tax bill.
They'd get one tax bill, but they'd both get a credit. They'd both be eligible for the credit. There's nothing in here that would
Okay.
say that they wouldn't be. And there's nothing in here that limits it to $1,500.
But we would only be reimbursing what they paid in. So if you get one bill and you pay
Yeah.
500, we're only reimbursing.
Yes,
the
that's
500.
correct. But if they get one bill and they pay $3,000, then you'd be reimbursing potentially all 3,000.
Right, right.
But
But I
1,500
don't-
at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
that's,
so,
you
but
have to have
to your
a
point,
lot of
Dean,
property.
You don't own the township.
to your point, Dean, actually, that it doesn't exclusively say that you're limited to 1,500 for the real estate tax.
Doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. But the reason why we all came up with that 1,500 is because of the combined total.
Gotcha.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So if you wanted to add that, you could, but that's up to you.
I don't see it based on the information you got.
Okay.
Tax collector. I mean, fine, but I mean, if we see it as a problem in the future, we can always amend it, right?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, I don't think many of your taxpayers pay $1,500 in
Right.
township.
Not
property tax.
township tax.
Right.
No, I'm not.
So is everyone okay with the amendments?
I am.
Yes, I am.
Then, with that said, I'm going to motion to allow MPL Law Firm to advertise for the amendment to the Volunteer Services Tax Program for the March Board of Supervisors meeting.
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Anything else, Ms. Manager?
I have nothing to add.
Takes us down to the Public Works report, and it's good to see that Keith Aaron's passed the CDL. That's a good
Yeah.
thing. Looks like the boys were very, very busy. Still are.
Yeah, just a side note, we are going over our budget for salt
Oh.
materials. Because we kind of cut it a little bit. We've had some mild winters, but this is proven to be different.
We just started the year and you were telling me we're already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was only 25,000 in that budgeted line item. We had to go into liquid fuels, which is what we don't want to do because that money is for savings to do our road projects. And we have some big road projects we really want to do that we're depleting from. But then, if it continues to go over, we're then gonna have to take from the capital expense line item, or it'll be a transfer of unencumbered funds at the end of the year. That's definitely the potential here.
Well, let's see where we are when we get through the season and get into spring, and then if we need to make an adjustment, we make an adjustment.
I'm sure we're not the only municipality in that.
Sure.
I suggested to Shane jokingly that we go around the boroughs and the township and sweep up the salt and reuse it. But he looked at me kind of funny.
That's might how, if it'll reduce it by 10% by going back out and recovering it.
Okay.
Any questions on the Public Works Director's report?
None for me.
I do have something to add.
Go ahead.
Shane wanted me to say that there is an update for Starview Road becoming a no truck route. It did get passed through PennDOT, so within the next month or so, they'll have it posted. No trucks. That's all I have.
Who requested that?
Manchester Township, actually.
Oh,
did.
that they
Down there
did.
that-
Yeah.
They did down
Because
at
it's
the
just
state
taking
thing.
the cement
Yeah.
Burma, you mean?
Yeah.
You get hung up there?
There are no subdivision and land development plans. Supervisor's comments. But before I go to supervisor comments, any other comments from the audience? Then I'll go to supervisor comments. Steve,
I have none.
I have several.
go ahead.
Okay. We did it last year. I'd like to see this done yearly. Can we prepare and post a year-end report for 2024 on our website and continue to do that? All the accomplishments and,
Forgot about
yeah,
that.
so, people look at our website, they can see what happened this past year, equipment we might have purchased.
Yep.
Secondly, it's February 16th through February 25th is National Engineers Week. Thank you, Byron, for what you do for the township. And then we've done this in the past. I think we should continue doing this every year, probably like around their first or second paycheck. Can we issue each employee a breakdown of all the costs, insurance?
Oh, yes, we
Yeah,
do that.
we do
Yep.
that.
You've done that already.
Oh, yep, we do that every
Okay.
year.
Is there a way that Jen can extrapolate everything, give us a total, like salaries, insurance and stuff that being paid to the employees? The board
Yes.
supervisor?
Mhm. Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then just bring it up and remind everybody, April 14th through April the 18th is local government week. Also I think we have a conference, PSATS conference in May. Registration open for that yet? I'm interested in attending. You're attending or not?
Haven't thought about it yet.
Okay.
I mean, I may consider.
And then lastly, the bill last year I was following for legal notices. In 2024, East Manchester spent $4,978.72 in legal notices. I just checked the legislation and January 29th, 25, Senator Doug Massaroni, along with Senator Kristen Hill, Senator Tracy Pennyclick, and Gene Yall, they propose a new Senate Bill 194, try and get this accomplished again, try and get it passed this time. I know PSATS is interested in this. I'm going to be following up with our representative from the state and see if he can introduce a companion bill similar or exactly the same, if we can get anything accomplished to more or less be able to advertise on our website and maybe some local government website instead of paying all these legal fees to advertise. That's all I have.
Okay. A few things I have. Christy and Jen are going to be heading out to PELRAS training on February 25th to March 3rd. Good luck. Stay awake.
Thank you. Well, no, I'll be back on the 3rd.
Yep.
But, okay.
And the only other thing I have is that I could really handle a mosquito bite and a sunburned nose right about now. But I guess that's not gonna happen until later on, so. I'll make a motion that we approve and pay all bills.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
If I may add something
Sure.
to that, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that, under capital expense, we did, pay out of it $514.04. It was a residual bill that came from furniture that we got towards the end of the year, but we didn't get billed until this year for, and that's where all of the furniture for the building came out of. But the reason why I'm telling you, I wouldn't normally say something like that, but it's because capital expense is something that we were using as our cushion this year, so I just wanted to let you be aware of why that occurred, okay?
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Careful going home.